New battle maps are like a party in my pants. You're all invited, so welcome my friends to the Sacred Cenote of Chaqua, courtesy of Waka Waka 3000. Should be the perfect canvas to unleash the dreadliest of dinosaurs, the Shredder of Lustria. Really interesting builds in this one, rocking an extremely elite HQ for the Children of the Old Ones, as they face down their oldest and fiercest rival in Archaon and the forces of Chaos, who have been marked by Slaanesh and will be immune to the effects of terror as a result. I will say though, there are times that discretion is the better part of valor, and standing your ground when the Shredder comes knocking is admirable but mistaken. So in this battle, I wanted to concentrate my forces into a single wrecking ball that could devastate a command point. Just overrun it, mince it, mash it, turn it into chop suey. Make them wish they'd never been born, should they choose to contest it. Legion of Chaqua will provide missile resist in case of throwing axes and help keep the Shredder alive to do its dirty work. Not a unit you typically want to fight straight up, especially in Domination, where you spawn in with less units capable of killing the damn thing. Ancient Salamanders there to explode enemy infantry naturally, and a Life Slann can do the same thing even better with the Dwellers below, but healing is an even bigger factor here to ensure the investment on the Saurian returns some dividends. Now, the downside with doing this, of course, particularly on a huge map like this one, is that you can typically only exert influence over a single point at a time. So as Chaos, the plan is to spread the field, take isolated engagements, and avoid the major confrontation for as long as possible. Archaon and the Summoners of Rage, who will come out in a second, certainly have the capability to chunk it down over time, but might not want to take a duel alongside a Slann and a Legion of Chaqua. So again, I say spreading the field is the important play for Chaos here. That's maybe easier said than done, especially if your army isn't tailored for that. Warriors of Chaos like to deathball and hit that critical mass too. They aren't about spreading the field in quite the same way that a pure Slaanesh army would be, for example. So as we see right now, it's very heavy metal, and it is more of a deathball style. So when you see that Dread Saurian, and you see what units you have to work with at the start, you want to keep away from it and play the side objectives, which is why you're seeing units like the Forsaken that can move in and take point number 3, and certainly buzzsaw their way through skinks quite efficiently. Ancient Salamander spewing some magma towards the Chosen and Chaos Warriors, moving up in the center, and it has a very important role to play because it's one of the few units Lizardmen have that can force an opponent into some hasty engagements. Lizardmen not typically known for their overwhelming range DPS. They do have some options, the Stegodon, that bolt thrower atop it, or with a solar engine, but having an armor-piercing range tool that makes an opponent want to attack can be really useful when you have a unit like the Dread Saurian stomping around, because if you decide to engage that thing incorrectly, it will punish your entire army, and quickly at that. Searing Doom from Archaon, nicely dodged by the cohort of Sotek. Remember, they have that refuse to die, and they are unbreakable, so getting them thrown into Chosen or Chaos Warriors is typically going to be a cost-efficient trade if you're on the Children of the Old One side. And Summoners of Rage appear to have gotten some kind of visual overhaul, because I don't remember them being quite that blue. Now, this map is a bit similar to Battle of Itza in that all 3 capture points are contested. There are no naturals that are closer to each other's spawn points, but they're very spread out. Only point number 2 and point number 1 can you kind of easily bounce between them, but even then, this is by far the biggest domination map in the series thus far. Now, obviously it's not an official map yet. Hopefully it will be, but Waka Waka 3000 has certainly added a lot of terrain and a lot of ability for players to spread the field and make use of those fast movers. Dwellers below from the Slann, dropping in on the right flank of those Chaos Warriors. Chosen going to dodge the majority of its damage output, although they did get chunked down a little bit there. You can see the Ancient Salamander firing into the background. There are a few kind of tightly packed, dense formations that should allow it to shoot in and accrue quite a bit of value, but don't expect the Skink cohort to hold out against the Chaos Warriors and Chosen over on point number 1 for too long. Cohort of Sotek are drawing the Chosen away. At the moment, it is a double cap in favor of the Warriors of Chaos, and they might be headed towards a triple cap. Nice overlap with the Marauder Horsemen charging into the back of the Feral Cold Ones. I think Skink Cohort and Feral Cold Ones together could take down Forsaken pretty easily with some nice hammer and anviling. Downside being that the Marauder Horsemen can reinforce very quickly, and they were right there to support, and it looks like Chaos should be able to control the top half of the map. And they're playing this pretty close to perfectly so far. They've avoided where that Shredder of Lustria is. It hasn't gotten the opportunity to chunk its way into any of these important infantry units. Of course, that is exposing some of these blobs to the Ancient Salamander fire, but that's why you have Archaon. You see something that's extremely important to eliminate. You can send in Archaon on Dorgar. He can pretty much outrun anything on the Lizardmen roster, and certainly outduel the vast majority of the roster as well. Skink Boys, playing the Skin Flute astride their Howdah, blowing Marauders away with Poison Darts of Death, and the Forsaken Marauder Horseman combo up top has secured objective number 3. The Lizardmen have a slight lead on VPs. For now, Archaon with the Slayer of Kings and Spirit Leech, attempting to cut down the fat toe to the stars, unable to do so, the Bubble of Note being activated preemptively. But a big question the Lizardmen need to ask themselves is how to reinforce. There is a Rev Crystal Bastiladon waiting in reserve, but thus far the Dread Saurian hasn't been able to see much action, so another dinosaur might not be the play quite yet, even though it would help secure the investment should a massive fight over one of these middle objectives break out sometime soon. Another Searing Doom from Archaon, and another Dwellers Below from the Slann Mage Priest of the Lore of Life, and that one's gonna be gorgeous. You combine that with the Blood Statuette of Spite, and Chaos Warriors are pretty much going to cease to exist. These stationary vortexes have been an extremely important part of the meta pretty much since the launch of Warhammer 3. They've been crazy good. We saw Penumbral Pendulum was really the top tier spell at the start, and since then it's pretty much been all stationary vortexes, and with a spell like that one you can see why. I mean, instant evaporation of an entire infantry unit. Only 750 gold, not the biggest deal, especially in a game mode like Domination, but it will provide some nice map control when you get the Dread Saurian and his Dread Aversion, the -8 leadership penalty, stomping in and munching on some infantry. They're not going to be able to stand and fight for too much longer. Even if they have ITP, it only helps you so much. So the angry Super Saiyan Crocodilian finally getting some action here and pretty much instantly causing a mass rout in the center for the Warriors of Chaos. Archaon and the Chosen playing the side objectives over at point number 1, while the Summoners of Rage are pretty much just biding their time and waiting for an opportunity to strike at the Dread Saurian. They have to be so careful when they decide to engage, but backed up by Archaon and perhaps some throwing axes, they could certainly do some serious work. Now, Ancient Salamander is still online, and its job of forcing Chaos into these fights has not really been super successful thus far, but the plus side of that is that if Chaos decides not to commit, they're still going to get exploded by the Ancient Sally. So it's still doing quite a bit for the Lizardmen, but ideally the reason the Ancient Salamander was brought in the first place was to force Chaos to engage the Dread Saurian wherever it marches, and it has made its way over to point number 1. Chosen of Slaanesh, gone. Utterly destroyed pretty much the second it decided to make contact, and we actually see a lot of what the cohort of Sotek can do there. Being unbreakable, having that refuse to die, and all that AP meant that they traded pretty well into some of those elite Warriors of Chaos units. Ancient Salamander, with that splash damage, typically not going to be amazing versus cavalry. Only killed 1 model of Chaos Knights as they move out of their reinforcement point. And this represents a major threat to the Lizardmen over on point number 2 in the center of the map, because they don't actually have a ton of tools for dealing with speed. Chaos Knights are a pretty good idea here. They're very expensive. They don't give an insane amount of map control, but their ability to bounce between objectives, paired with some cheap infantry like Marauders or Forsaken, could allow them to overwhelm the top half of the map and make it even more difficult for the Lizardmen to regain control over objective number 3. Throwing axes have come out. Really good idea here. They're going to be needed if you want to take down the Shredder of Lustria, and the Ancient Salamander has been cut down by the Slayer of Kings. Archaon the Everchosen living up to his lofty reputation and showing the beast what fire and death truly looks like. But now it's getting spicy, because the battle's brewing over the center of the map. All those expensive elite troops are making their way towards the brawl, and in anticipation of the fight, the Rev Crystal has been summoned as well. Remember that the Slann Mage Priest has already cast 2 Dwellers, probably still good on mana for now, but won't be able to cast infinite regrowth for the Shredder. Bubble of Nopes for that protection, for that ward save, and an AoE will certainly help a lot. But having another source of healing could help tremendously in this grind, and that's what we're going to see here. Both armies committing a lot to killing each other's most expensive troops. Chaos Knights are in a bit of a nightmarish position and are already close to death. Manticore certainly not going to enjoy fighting a Dread Saurian either. Summoners of Rage and Archaon are right there. Throwing axes are chunking in, and they are amazing against big monsters like this because they can't miss, right? The hitbox is so large that every single missile is going to hit, and that means all that armor piercing is going its way. Overcast Regrowth is keeping it alive for now, but only just. Spirit Leech from Archaon coming down as well. Banishment to zone out the throwing axes and force them to move at least so they don't keep shooting in at point blank range. That Rev Crystal was potentially game changing because I'm not sure the Shredder would have been able to keep from routing without the extra healing from that Bastiladon. Outcome of that combat has not been decided yet. Shredder up to 2,700 damage value, floating around 1,000 before that. What spell are we looking at? That's a Chain Lightning from the Summoners of Rage. They've been in melee long enough to cast their Bound Vortex. Dread Saurian is beasting it up right now, and we're really seeing the power of it. I mean, you look at its size and you look at those massive gnashing teeth, and you realize that this is its role. It's just an army beater, but without access to inordinate amounts of healing, I do not think that the Shredder would have survived fighting Archaon and the Summoners of Rage, who are pretty much born and bred for killing large monsters, especially when the Slayer of Kings is active. Slann Mage Priest and Lore Life getting into melee combat too, taking out a few Chaos Knights with a few bursts of arcane energy. Saurus pushing forward, engaging the Marauder Horsemen, who are fine to die right now. They've used all their ammo, and really you want to get those throwing axes back into your recruitment pool so you can summon them more and deal with this Dread Saurian. It's getting low, but it is not dead yet. Saurus keeping Forsaken off of objective number 1. Chosen of Slaanesh moving around the flank, and looks like they're about to engage some armor-piercing red-crested skinks. Manticore broke off from the fight as well. Now Lizardmen are looking pretty strong on objective number 3 and are about to secure themselves a triple cap. They are down about 300 VP, so a sizable lead for the Warriors of Chaos, but that gap will close quickly if a triple cap is indeed secured. And somehow, the Ancient Salamander has returned, firing into the side of the Chosen, and that's a great combo. If you are the children of the old ones, Skinks to hold them down with their armor piercing. They're certainly not going to beat Chosen in melee, but they're fine to trade their lives for a bit more magma spewing from the Sally. Taste our McQueedles, you bitches. Forsaken getting wrecked by the Saurus, who've done a great job of keeping the Chaos Infantry off the objective, and given the Lizardmen a lot of extra time with the capture points. That Chaos lead is evaporating. Lizardmen have a lot of supply, 1,700 right now. Gonna be interesting to see what they decide to summon. Manticore going after the Ancient Salamander alongside Spirit Leech and Archaon. Really smart play there, because this one has not had much time to fire in, and if they could eliminate it early, that could be a huge swing in terms of the supply game, which is always kind of a meta game within the main game itself. Getting that supply advantage is a really big deal. Ancient Salamander is fine for now because a Regrowth and the Dread Saurian are right there to help out. But with Armored Trolls coming out, interesting pick. Ideally, I think Chaos would love to have some Fimir with Great Weapons here. That would be an amazing choice to help deal with the Dread Saurian, to pin it down and chop it apart with those Great Weapons and that extra bonus versus large. But I guess Dragon Ogres kind of perform the same role, and Summoners of Rage should be back in that recruitment pool momentarily if they didn't route towards the edges of the map anyway. Meanwhile, Shredder is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. It's in and amongst the Chosen. It's been exerting influence everywhere on this lower half of the map, bouncing between objective number 1 and objective number 2, killing everything that dares to engage it. And that Cretaceous Carnivore is now up over 5,000 damage value accrued. It has been insane so far, and is really the main reason the Lizardmen were able to take control over objective number 2 in the middle and kill off a lot of those important Chaos troops. And Lizardmen have just taken the lead for the first time in the last 10 minutes or so. Chosen are gone, or about to be anyway, and the Warriors of Chaos are reeling. Now, if you are Archaon the Everchosen at this point in the game, especially if this was a competitive tournament domination style battle, you would probably want to start spamming Hellstriders of Slaanesh, Light Cavalry, and start playing those side objectives now. You tried your hand at taking down the Dread Saurian in the center. It wasn't a bad idea. They had Archaon and the Summoners of Rage there. They had Chaos Knights to pin it down in place. They almost killed it, but the Rev Crystal saved the Dread Saurian. Now you realize that you can't kill the beast, or at least you're not going to be able to do so in time, but you need to capture points. So how do you do that? You get a lot of speed on the field, and you overwhelm 2 of those objectives simultaneously, wherever the Dread Saurian is not. The problem is, now Lizardmen have a supply advantage, and they should be able to feed a steady stream of infantry onto all 3 points, or whichever 2 they want to secure, and they should be able to hold on for a win unless something drastically changes for Archie. Big monstrous infantry push in the center. Chaos Warriors, Trolls, Chaos Spawn, Archaon the Everchosen, going after the Slann Mage Priest, trying to snipe it out and prevent it from healing the Dread Saurian anymore. Even Chaos Knights are coming out now, and they'll butcher their way through Lizardmen infantry no problem. The downside to this unit being that they're 1,500 or 1,600 gold, you would definitely get more value out of 2 Hellstrider units. And perhaps more importantly, you get more speed and more map control. I don't think there were any Hellstrider units in the Chaos Army for this battle. They're very meta, and that's probably why we didn't see them here, because this is not like a super hyper competitive game or anything. But yeah, I would say that generally speaking, 2 light cav often better than 1 heavy cav, especially when it's a ridiculous unit like the Hellstriders of Slaanesh. And frankly, I think Chaos Knights could use a bit of help. They're not an amazing unit at all in their current form. Feral Cold Ones leading a rather limp dick anemic charge into the center of the Chaos HQ. Archaon has 5,000 damage value himself. He's been a beast this game and almost managed to finish off the Slann Mage Priest, who is routing now. Dread Saurian forced to fight while the throwing axes throw in, and now he won't have the help of the Rev Crystal or of the Lore of Life healing. So this might be the end for the Crocodilian Carnivore that has just shredded its way through an entire army, an entire host of Chaos troops. But Archaon, he's had enough, dude. He had his ass beat like a conga drum, and I do not think we will be seeing the Everchosen again. But at the same time, the Shredder disappearing. Chosen and Throwing Axes managed to rout it off, although I think we will see it return. Might get resummoned at the end, but I think it's a rather irrelevant point. Lizardmen have full map control, a big lead in VPs, and unless a triple cap is forthcoming soon, it's not going to matter at all. So, interesting game. Love those kinds of builds with Lizardmen when you go just super expensive elite HQ and invest everything in keeping the Dread Saurian alive. And you can see that it can pay some pretty huge dividends. Almost 6,000 damage value in this battle. Awesome. Now, of course, tons of support there from the Life Slann and from the Rev Crystal to keep it online. But I would say that that investment was absolutely worth it and was a big reason why Teotihuacan was able to take the Sacred Cenote of Chakwa. As for Chaos, Archaon literally had 5,000 damage value, so he was almost as good as the Dread Saurian himself. He was fantastic. I think that Chaos in a true competitive environment here would definitely want to have a little bit more light cav and play those side objectives more. I think that the game started out pretty much perfectly for Chaos, and things started devolving as soon as that fight in the center was taken against the Dread Saurian. Now, I get why you would think you can take that fight, because Archaon and Summoners of Rage together are a powerful force, and they frankly almost did. And if they kill the Dread Saurian there, I think they have a good chance to win. So I don't think it was a terrible call at all. But more light cav, more Hellstriders, and playing those side objectives, avoiding the powerful HQ of the Lizardmen, definitely the way you'd want to approach that in a truly competitive environment. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you all in the next one. Also important to remember that you are limited on how many marked units you can bring. So if you want to bring ITP on your front line, which you did there, which makes a lot of sense against Lizardmen because dinos have so much terror, then you are going to be giving up the ability to bring light cav, and in that case, you wouldn't be able to bring Hellstriders, which is probably what happened here.